A vet faints while performing a routine ultrasound on a prized mare, leaving everyone at the ranch in shock. What she saw wasn't just a foal. With it was something rare, extraordinary, and life-changing. As the stable erupts in chaos, the mare's health hangs by a thread, and the race to save her and the foal begins. Will they make it through? And what makes this foal so special? This is a heartwarming story of resilience, dedication, and the unbreakable bond between humans and the animals they love. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the bus window as Olivia Martin watched familiar landmarks roll past. Her stomach did little flips of excitement mixed with nerves. Fields of swaying grass and scattered oak trees stretched as far as she could see, a sight that brought back memories of her childhood. "Almost there," she whispered to herself, clutching her worn leather bag closer. Inside were her most precious possessions, her veterinary tools, and the acceptance letter from Mr. Callahan that had changed her life. The bus turned onto a quiet country road, and Olivia's heart quickened as she spotted the wooden arch marking the entrance to Callahan Ranch. The weathered sign beneath it read, "Home of Champions," in carefully maintained gold lettering. As she stepped off the bus, the fresh country air filled her lungs. The main house stood proud on a gentle slope, its white walls gleaming in the morning light. Several horses grazed in nearby paddocks, their coats shining like polished pennies. "You must be Dr. Martin," a deep, friendly voice called out. Mr. Callahan walked toward her with an easy smile that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. He was tall and sturdy, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that immediately put her at ease. "Please call me Olivia," she replied, shaking his offered hand. "Welcome to the ranch, Olivia. Let me show you around, starting with our special lady." Mr. Callahan led her toward a large stable. "Starfire's our pride and joy. This will be her first foal, and we're all pretty excited about it." Inside the stable, Olivia's eyes adjusted to the dim light. In the largest stall, a beautiful chestnut mare stood quietly munching on hay. Her coat had a distinctive metallic sheen that made her seem to glow from within. "She's gorgeous," Olivia breathed, approaching the stall carefully. Starfire lifted her head, regarding Olivia with intelligent eyes. "May I?" Olivia asked, gesturing toward the stall door. At Mr. Callahan's nod, she stepped inside. The mare remained calm as Olivia ran gentle hands along her sides, noting her excellent condition. Throughout the afternoon, Mr. Callahan introduced her to the rest of the ranch, the training rings, the other stables, and the friendly staff who greeted her warmly. She could feel the sense of family among them, the shared purpose that united everyone who worked there. As evening approached, Mr. Callahan showed her to a cozy cottage near the main house. "This is your home now," he said warmly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day." Inside the cottage, Olivia unpacked her few belongings and settled at a small desk by the window. She spread out Starfire's medical records, studying them carefully as crickets began their evening chorus outside. Her fingers traced over the ultrasound schedule for the next morning, and butterflies danced in her stomach again. "This is really happening," she whispered to herself, looking out at the peaceful ranch grounds. The responsibility felt enormous, but so did the sense of rightness. She was exactly where she needed to be. The early morning mist still clung to the ground as Olivia approached the stable. Her footsteps crunched on the gravel path, and she could already hear movement inside. Clara, her assistant, looked up from the ultrasound equipment she was setting up. "Morning! I've got everything almost ready," Clara said cheerfully, her blonde ponytail swinging as she organized the supplies. Olivia noticed immediately that something was off with Starfire. The usually calm mare was shifting from foot to foot, her tail swishing anxiously. Her ears flicked back and forth, and she kept pawing at the ground of her stall. "Hey there, beautiful," Olivia said softly, approaching the stall. "What's got you so worked up this morning?" She entered slowly, keeping her movements smooth and deliberate. Reaching out, she stroked Starfire's neck, feeling the tense muscles beneath the gleaming coat. "Shh, it's okay. We're just going to take a look at your baby." Under Olivia's gentle touch and soothing words, Starfire gradually settled. Clara brought the ultrasound machine closer, and they began the familiar procedure. The screen flickered to life, casting a blue glow across their faces. Olivia studied the images intently, her practiced eye scanning for the usual markers. Suddenly, she froze. The color drained from her face, and her knees buckled. "Olivia!" Clara lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. "Help! Someone help!" Everything went black for a moment. When Olivia's eyes fluttered open, she found herself sitting on a hay bale, Clara's worried face hovering over her. "What happened? What did you see?" Clara pressed, holding a water bottle to Olivia's lips. Olivia's hands trembled as she tried to take the bottle. Her mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what she'd witnessed on the screen. I need..." She swallowed hard. "We need to call Mr. Callahan." Clara immediately pulled out her phone, and within minutes Mr. Callahan's hurried footsteps echoed through the stable. His usually calm face was creased with worry as he knelt beside Olivia. "What's wrong? What did you find?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. Olivia struggled to find the words. "There was something on the ultrasound. I've never seen anything like it." She ran a shaking hand through her hair. "The shape wasn't normal. I need to check again to be sure, but something's not right with Starfire's pregnancy." Mr. Callahan placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. You're not alone in this." Olivia took a deep breath, drawing strength from his words. She straightened her shoulders, her professional instincts kicking back in. "I'll figure out what's going on," she promised, looking between Mr. Callahan and Clara. "Whatever this is, we'll get to the bottom of it." The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Olivia arrived at the stable to find an unusual crowd gathered outside. Ranch hands huddled in small groups, their voices carrying across the yard in excited whispers. Some leaned against fence posts while others paced, all of them speculating about yesterday's events. "I heard there might be twins in there," said Jake, one of the younger hands, gesturing animatedly. "My cousin's mare had twins once." "Don't be ridiculous," Sarah, a senior stable hand, replied. "Could be something worse. Did you see how Dr. Martin fainted?" Another hand chuckled nervously. "Maybe it's aliens, like one of those sci-fi movies." As Olivia approached, the whispers grew louder. Inside the stable, Starfire's agitation was obvious. The mare's hooves clattered against the wooden floor as she paced back and forth in her stall. Her ears were pinned back, and her tail swished in distress. "Everyone needs to clear the area," Olivia announced firmly, pushing through the crowd. "All this excitement isn't good for Starfire." Several ranch hands exchanged glances but didn't move. A few even inched closer to the stable door, trying to peek inside. "Come on, Doc," Jake protested. "We're just worried about her." Mr. Callahan's voice cut through the murmurs. "You heard Dr. Martin." He appeared beside Olivia, his usually gentle tone carrying an edge of authority. "Clear out, all of you. Back to your duties." The crowd dispersed reluctantly, casting backward glances as they returned to their morning tasks. As the last person left, Olivia caught a glimpse of something unexpected on Mr. Callahan's face. His confident expression faltered for just a moment, revealing a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The day passed slowly, with Olivia keeping close watch on Starfire. As darkness settled over the ranch, The mare's nervous energy finally began to subside. But something still felt off. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. Standing outside the stable in the growing darkness, Olivia stared into the night. The chirp of crickets and the occasional soft nicker from inside the stable were the only sounds breaking the evening silence. Her mind raced with questions about what she'd seen on the ultrasound. Tomorrow, she would review those images again, this time more carefully than ever. The morning sun streamed through the small window of Olivia's office, casting a warm glow on the ultrasound machine's screen. Clara stood beside her, both women leaning in close as Olivia carefully scrolled through yesterday's images. "There," Olivia said, freezing the screen. "Do you see that shape next to the foal?" Clara squinted. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Olivia grabbed her notepad and began sketching what she saw, her hand moving quickly across the paper. The shape appeared almost translucent, with edges that seemed to pulse and shift. She documented every detail, including measurements and position relative to the foal. "I've seen hundreds of ultrasounds," Olivia muttered, "but this is completely different." Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. "I need to call Dr. Parker. If anyone can make sense of this, it's him." While waiting for a response, Olivia paced her small office. Clara watched her with concern, organizing the printed ultrasound images on the desk. "Maybe it's just a shadow," Clara suggested gently, "or some kind of technical glitch with the machine." Olivia shook her head. "My gut says it's more than that. Something about this feels important." She stopped pacing and looked at Clara. "I've never seen anything like it in all my years of training." The phone's sudden ring made them both jump. Dr. Parker's gruff voice came through clearly. "Dr. Martin, tell me exactly what you're seeing." Olivia described the anomaly in detail, her voice steady despite her nerves. Dr. Parker listened without interruption, only occasionally making thoughtful sounds. "I'll be there within the hour," he said finally. "Keep Starfire calm. No more ultrasounds until I arrive." Relief flooded through Olivia as she ended the call. She hurried to Starfire's stall, where the mare stood quietly munching on hay. Reaching out, she stroked the horse's sleek neck. "Don't worry, girl," she whispered softly. "Help is on the way." A cloud of dust announced Dr. Parker's arrival as his weathered pickup truck rumbled up the ranch's driveway. The elderly veterinarian stepped out with surprising agility, his silver hair catching the morning light. He carried a well-worn leather medical bag that had clearly seen decades of service. Olivia hurried to meet him, her hands fidgeting with her stethoscope. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Dr. Parker." "Well, your call certainly piqued my interest," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of dry humor. "Let's see what we've got here." As they walked toward the stable, Olivia detailed everything she had observed over the past few days. Dr. Parker listened without interruption, his keen eyes taking in every detail of the surroundings. "And the mare's appetite? Sleep patterns?" he asked, pausing at the stable entrance. "Normal until yesterday," Olivia responded. "She's been more restless since the ultrasound." Inside the stable, Starfire greeted them with a soft nickering sound. Dr. Parker approached her slowly, his movements deliberate and careful. He ran his experienced hands along her flanks, checking vital signs and muscle tension. "Hello there, beautiful," he murmured to the mare. "I hear you've been keeping these folks on their toes." His gentle banter seemed to put Starfire at ease as he conducted his examination. Clara brought in the ultrasound machine, and Dr. Parker nodded his thanks. "We'll need to sedate her slightly," he said, reaching into his bag, "just enough to keep her calm during the procedure." After administering the sedative, they waited for it to take effect. Dr. Parker used the time to review Olivia's previous ultrasound images, his expression growing more focused with each passing minute. When Starfire was ready, Dr. Parker began the new ultrasound. The stable fell silent except for the quiet hum of the machine. His weathered hands moved the probe with practiced precision, his eyes fixed on the screen. Minutes ticked by as he studied different angles, occasionally adjusting the settings. The mysterious shape appeared again, just as Olivia had described. Dr. Parker's eyebrows drew together as he leaned closer to the screen. Finally, he stepped back, his face serious. He turned to Olivia with a look that mixed concern with professional curiosity. "This isn't normal," he said, pointing to the monitor. "I've seen some strange cases, but this is something else." He crossed his arm, studying the image once more. "We need to investigate the circumstances surrounding Starfire's pregnancy. Every detail could be important." The small office felt crowded as Dr. Parker gathered everyone around the desk. The ultrasound images glowed on the computer screen, casting a bluish tint across their concerned faces. Clara stood near the door, her notepad ready, while Mr. Callahan settled into a chair. His weathered hands clasped tightly in his lap. "What I'm about to show you is highly unusual," Dr. Parker began, zooming in on the ultrasound image. "Here's the foal, healthy and developing normally." His finger traced the outline of the baby horse on the screen. "But this," he pointed to a distinct rectangular shape nearby. "This is what concerns me." Olivia leaned forward, her eyes widening. "Is that metallic?" "Yes," Dr. Parker confirmed, his voice grave. "The density and reflection patterns indicate it's some kind of metal object, and based on its position and clean edges, this was surgically implanted." Mr. Callahan's face paled. He gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white. "Surgically? But how? When?" "That's what we need to figure out," Dr. Parker said, turning to face him. "Tell me about the breeding process. Who handled Starfire?" Mr. Callahan ran a trembling hand through his gray hair. "I used Victor King's breeding service. They're well known in the industry, been around for decades." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. "I have all their information right here." Dr. Parker and Olivia exchanged worried glances. The revelation of a surgical implant changed everything. This wasn't just an unusual pregnancy anymore. "We need to handle this carefully," Dr. Parker said, his tone measured. "Olivia, I strongly recommend reporting this to the authorities. This kind of unauthorized surgical procedure, it's not just unethical, it could be criminal." Olivia bit her lip, considering the implications. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders as she looked at the ultrasound image again. Mr. Callahan straightened in his chair, his initial shock giving way to determination. "If someone did this to Starfire, we need to know why." With shaking hands, Olivia picked up her phone. She took a deep breath and dialed the local authorities, her voice steadier than she felt as she began to explain the situation. The morning sun had barely crested the hills when a patrol car pulled up to the ranch's main office. Two officers stepped out. Officer Martinez, tall and serious, and Officer Chen, shorter, with kind eyes. They introduced themselves to Mr. Callahan and Olivia, who were waiting on the front porch. "Thank you for coming," Olivia said, leading them inside to the small conference room where she had laid out the ultrasound images and Starfire's medical records. Officer Martinez pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Callahan, can you walk us through how you came to work with Victor King?" Mr. Callahan settled into his chair, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. "Victor's breeding service has been around for years. They've produced some of the finest horses in the state. When Starfire was ready for breeding, I wanted the best for her." "Can you tell us about the actual procedure?" Officer Chen asked gently. That's where things get strange, now that I think about it. Mr. Callahan's brow furrowed. Victor insisted on complete privacy during the procedure, said it was to prevent stress for the mayor. He paused, his face clouding with doubt. At the time, it seemed reasonable, but now... Was there anything else unusual? Officer Martinez prompted. Yes, Mr. Callahan said slowly, as if pieces were falling into place. When I asked for detailed medical records afterward, Victor kept putting me off, said everything was proprietary information. His voice grew heavy with regret. He gave me basic documentation, but nothing comprehensive. Olivia listened intently, her veterinary training raising red flags at every detail. She noticed Mr. Callahan's shoulders slumping as he continued to speak, the weight of his decisions visible in his posture. Did Mr. King mention any special procedures or treatments? Officer Chen asked, taking careful notes. He talked about some breakthrough technology, Mr. Callahan replied, shaking his head. Said it would ensure a perfect foal. I was so focused on giving Starfire the best chance. His voice trailed off. The officers finished their questioning and stood to leave. We'll investigate Mr. King's operation thoroughly, Officer Martinez assured them. Dr. Martin, please keep detailed records of Starfire's condition and contact us immediately if anything changes. Of course, Olivia nodded, standing to walk them out. At the door, Officer Chen turned back. And please don't discuss this case with anyone outside the ranch. We don't want to compromise the investigation. As the patrol car disappeared down the driveway, Olivia and Mr. Callahan stood in silence. Their eyes met, sharing an unspoken understanding of the gravity of the situation. Mr. Callahan's usual confident demeanor had been replaced by worry, while Olivia's professional concern was evident in her tense expression. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Olivia's office when her phone rang. Officer Martinez's voice came through clearly, his tone serious. Dr. Martin, we've been looking into Victor King's background, he said. There's a pattern of controversial practices in his breeding operations. Several complaints have been filed against him for experimental techniques, but nothing concrete enough for charges. Olivia's hand tightened around the phone. What kind of experiments? The reports are vague, mostly ethical concerns about his methods. We need you to keep detailed records of everything related to Starfire. Document every change, no matter how small. After hanging up, Olivia called Clara into her office. Together, they spread out all of Starfire's records across the desk. Medical history, breeding documentation, daily observation notes, and ultrasound images. We need to organize everything chronologically, Olivia explained, handing Clara a stack of papers, and start a new log for hourly observations. As they worked, voices drifted in through the open window. Ranch hands gathered near the water trough, their worried whispers carrying on the breeze. I heard King got kicked out of 3 different breeding associations. Someone said his experiments killed 2 horses last year. Wonder what he did to Starfire. Mr. Callahan's voice cut through the chatter. Everyone, meeting in the main barn. Now. The staff gathered quickly, their faces showing concern and curiosity. Mr. Callahan stood before them, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced with determination. I know you're all worried about Starfire, he began. But right now we need to focus on our jobs. These animals depend on us. Whatever's happening with Victor King, our priority is keeping the ranch running smoothly and our horses safe. The sun was setting when Olivia finished her paperwork. She walked to Starfire's stall, her footsteps echoing in the quiet barn. The mare's ears perked up at her approach, but she remained still, watching Olivia carefully. Hey, beautiful, Olivia said softly, reaching out to stroke Starfire's gleaming mane. The mare's coat felt warm under her hand, her breathing steady and calm. Yet there was wariness in her dark eyes, a hint of unease that hadn't been there before. "We're going to figure this out," Olivia whispered, continuing to stroke the mare. "I promise." She settled onto a hay bale outside the stall, watching Starfire in the growing darkness. The mare's gentle breathing mixed with the evening sounds of the ranch. But Olivia's mind was focused on one thing: protecting this precious mare and her mysterious unborn foal, no matter what it took. The morning sun rose over Callahan Ranch, but its warmth did little to ease the tension in the air. Near the equipment shed, two ranch hands were arguing loudly, their voices carrying across the yard. "This whole mess is because someone didn't do their homework on King," shouted Mike, one of the senior hands. "How are we supposed to know?" Sarah shot back, throwing her hands up. "He came with references." More workers gathered around, taking sides in the heated debate. Some blamed management, while others defended Mr. Callahan's decision. The argument grew louder until Olivia heard it from her office. She hurried outside, her white coat flapping in the morning breeze. "Everyone, please," she called out, stepping between the feuding groups. "This isn't helping Starfire. She needs calm and quiet right now." In Starfire's stall, the situation was deteriorating. The mare paced in circles, her hooves clicking against the floor in an endless rhythm. Her feed bucket sat untouched, hay scattered across the ground where she'd knocked it over. "Come on, girl," Olivia coaxed, holding out an apple. Starfire turned away, continuing her restless movement. Her coat was damp with sweat despite the cool morning air. Mr. Callahan appeared at the stable entrance, his face lined with worry. "How is she?" "Not good," Olivia replied softly. "The stress is getting to her. She hasn't eaten since last night." Before Mr. Callahan could respond, Mike approached them, his hat in his hands. "Sir, we need to talk. Some of us, well, we're thinking about leaving. This investigation, all these police questions, it's too much." "I understand your concerns," Mr. Callahan began, but two more ranch hands appeared behind Mike, nodding in agreement. "We didn't sign up for this kind of trouble," one of them added. The day dragged on, heavy with uncertainty. As evening approached, Olivia found herself sitting across from Mr. Callahan at his kitchen table. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the warm room, but neither had much appetite. "I should have looked deeper into Victor's background," Mr. Callahan said, staring into his coffee cup. "I let my excitement about breeding Starfire cloud my judgment." Olivia reached across the table, placing her hand on his arm. "You couldn't have known. Victor fooled a lot of people. What matters now is that we're doing everything we can to protect Starfire and her foal." Mr. Callahan managed a small smile. "Thank you, Olivia. I'm grateful to have you." A loud crash from the direction of the stables cut through the night air. They both jumped to their feet, chairs scraping against the floor. "The stable!" Olivia gasped. They rushed toward the door, their dinner forgotten on the table. Olivia and Mr. Callahan raced through the darkness toward the stables, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The sound of splintering wood and frightened neighing filled the night air. When they reached Starfire's stall, they found the mare rearing up, her powerful hooves striking the partially broken door. "She's going to hurt herself," Olivia shouted, rushing to her office to grab her medical bag. Her hands trembled as she prepared the sedative, measuring the dose carefully despite her racing heart. Mr. Callahan spoke softly to Starfire, trying to calm her while keeping a safe distance. "Easy, girl. Easy now." With practiced skill, Olivia administered the sedative. Gradually, Starfire's movements slowed, her breathing steadied, and she settled onto the fresh straw. Olivia pulled up a chair beside the stall, her eyes fixed on her patient. "I'll stay with her tonight," she told Mr. Callahan. "We can't risk another episode." Throughout the night, Olivia monitored Starfire's vital signs, speaking gentle words of comfort whenever the mare stirred. As dawn broke, Clara arrived with fresh coffee and news. The police were back. 2 officers stood in the ranch office, their expressions serious. "We've located Victor King," the senior officer announced. "He's being brought in for questioning right now." Later that morning, they learned what Victor had to say. He sat in the interrogation room, maintaining his composure as he defended his work. "My methods are revolutionary," he insisted, his voice smooth and confident. "Everything I do is for the advancement of equine breeding." Under intense questioning, Victor finally admitted to more. "Yes, I've been experimenting with genetic enhancements. We're creating superior breeds, stronger, faster horses that could change everything." His eyes gleamed with pride. "What's happening with Starfire is merely a side effect of innovation." But when pressed about the metallic object, Victor's demeanor changed. He crossed his arms and refused to explain further. "That's proprietary information," he said firmly. The officers assured Olivia and Mr. Callahan they would continue investigating. As they walked back to the stable, Olivia's hands clenched into fists, her anger barely contained. "If he's lying, we'll find out," she told Mr. Callahan, her voice steady with determination. Inside the stable, Starfire lifted her head as they approached. The mare stretched her neck toward Olivia, gently nuzzling her hand. The gesture of trust brought tears to Olivia's eyes as she stroked the mare's soft muzzle. The morning sun had barely risen when Olivia noticed something wrong with Starfire. The mare's usual bright eyes looked dull, and her movements were slow and unsteady. When Dr. Parker arrived for his routine check, his face grew serious as he listened to the mare's heartbeat. "Her pulse is irregular," he said, removing his stethoscope, "and her breathing, it's not right." Olivia's stomach tightened with worry. "The foal?" Dr. Parker performed a quick ultrasound, his expression grim. "The foal showing signs of distress. That object we found, it might be interfering with the pregnancy." They stepped outside the stall to discuss options. Dr. Parker ran a hand through his gray hair. "We might need to consider an emergency delivery. It's risky, especially with that foreign object. But if we wait too long—" "What are the chances?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 50-50 at best, for both of them." Inside the stable, Clara was already organizing medical supplies, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by focused determination. Word spread quickly through the ranch, and soon the stable hands who had been arguing just days before came together, offering help. "We need fresh straw," Clara called out. 2 ranch hands immediately headed to the storage barn. "I'll keep water coming," another offered, filling clean buckets. Olivia worked methodically, checking Starfire's vitals every 30 minutes. The mare's condition continued to decline despite their best efforts. Her breathing became more labored, and her skin felt clammy under Olivia's touch. As night fell, the stable buzzed with nervous energy. The staff took turns bringing coffee and sandwiches to the medical team, their previous conflicts forgotten in the face of the emergency. Just before midnight, a sharp cry from Starfire's stall sent everyone running. The mare had collapsed onto her side, her legs trembling as she struggled to breathe. Her sides heaved with each desperate breath. Dr. Parker rushed to examine her, his movements quick but controlled. After a moment, he turned to Olivia, his expression grave. "We're out of time. We need to deliver now, or we'll lose them both." Olivia nodded, pulling on fresh gloves as Clara set up the surgical equipment. The stable fell silent except for Starfire's labored breathing. "This is it," Dr. Parker said, positioning himself beside the mare. "Let's save them both." The stable hummed with tense energy as Dr. Parker and Olivia prepared for surgery. Clara had transformed the stall into a makeshift operating room, with bright portable lights casting harsh shadows on the walls. Starfire lay unconscious on her side, her breathing shallow but steady under sedation. Mr. Callahan stood at the stable entrance, his weathered hands clasped tightly together. His usual confident demeanor had given way to visible worry as he watched the medical team work. "Scalpel!" Dr. Parker called out, his voice steady despite the pressure. Olivia handed him the instrument, her eyes fixed on Starfire's vital signs monitor. As they began the procedure, the metallic object they'd seen on the ultrasound came into view. Dr. Parker carefully extracted it, revealing a sleek device about the size of a small phone. "It's some kind of tracking device," Olivia observed, noting the blinking lights and complex circuitry. "There's a data storage component, too." "We'll examine it later," Dr. Parker said firmly. "Right now, this foal needs our full attention." Suddenly, Starfire's heart rate plummeted. The monitor's alarm pierced the tense silence of the stable. "Blood pressure dropping," Clara announced, her voice tight with concern. Olivia moved quickly, adjusting medications and fluids. "Come on, girl," she whispered, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "Stay with us." After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, they finally reached the foal. As they worked to deliver it, gasps of amazement filled the stable. The colt that emerged was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its coat gleamed like polished gold under the surgical lights, and when it opened its eyes, they were a striking, impossible blue. The stable erupted in cheers and applause. Even Dr. Parker allowed himself a small smile as he continued working on Starfire. Olivia remained focused, monitoring the mare's vital signs until they finally stabilized. Mr. Callahan approached the newborn colt, tears glistening in his eyes. He gently cradled the foal's head in his hands, studying its unusual features with wonder. "Aurora," he whispered softly, stroking the golden coat. "Welcome to the world." Morning sunlight streamed through the stable windows, casting long shadows across the hay-strewn floor. Olivia and Dr. Parker huddled over a small workbench, examining the metallic object they'd removed from Starfire during surgery. The device caught the light, its polished surface revealing intricate circuitry beneath a transparent casing. "I've never seen anything like this," Olivia said, turning the object carefully in her hands. "It's so advanced." Dr. Parker adjusted his glasses, peering closely at the device. "This isn't just a simple tracking chip. Look at these components here." He pointed to a series of tiny modules embedded within. These appear to be data storage units, likely containing genetic modification information. Olivia's hands tightened around the device, her jaw clenching. So Victor King wasn't just tracking Starfire. He was using her as a test subject for his experiments? "That would be my guess," Dr. Parker replied grimly. "The question is how he managed to implant this without anyone noticing." Behind them, Starfire rested in her stall, her breathing steady and strong after the surgery. Olivia glanced at her, feeling a surge of protective anger. Mr. Callahan would never have agreed to this if he'd known. A soft nickering sound drew their attention. In the stall, Aurora was attempting to stand for the first time, his spindly legs trembling with effort. His golden coat seemed to catch every ray of sunlight, creating an almost ethereal glow around him. As he finally managed to balance on all four legs, he blinked his startling blue eyes, looking directly at them. Everyone in the stable stopped to watch, mesmerized by the sight. Even Dr. Parker fell silent, his usual clinical demeanor softening as Aurora took his first wobbly steps. "You're one in a million, little guy," Olivia whispered, unable to take her eyes off the extraordinary foal. Mr. Callahan stepped forward, his expression a mix of wonder and fierce determination. "Whatever Victor King was trying to do here, he won't get near either of them again. I'll make sure of that." The morning brought a flurry of activity to the stable as Aurora charmed everyone who passed by. Olivia and Clara watched in amazement as the golden foal, barely a day old, pranced around his mother with surprising grace. "Have you ever seen a foal this active so soon?" Clara asked, jotting notes on her clipboard. Olivia shook her head, her brow furrowed. "That's what concerns me. Look at how he's moving. His coordination is incredible for his age." They observed as Aurora playfully dodged around a water bucket, his movements quick and precise. When he bumped into it, the heavy bucket barely moved, suggesting strength that seemed impossible for a newborn foal. Throughout the day, ranch hands stopped by to peek at Aurora. Even Tommy, the most skeptical of the bunch, couldn't resist smiling when Aurora stretched his neck out for a gentle pat. The foal's bright blue eyes seemed to connect with each visitor, drawing them in. "He's something special, isn't he?" Clara said, watching Aurora nuzzle against a usually gruff, stable hand who was now grinning like a child. "Too special," Olivia replied quietly. She pulled Clara aside, away from the growing crowd of admirers. "I need to run some tests. These aren't normal traits we're seeing." While Clara kept the visitors entertained, Olivia carefully collected DNA samples from Aurora. The foal stood perfectly still during the procedure, as if understanding the importance of staying calm. His intelligence was yet another sign that something was different about him. As the sun began to set, Olivia sat at her desk, staring at the test results on her computer screen. The numbers and charts confirmed what she'd suspected. Aurora's genetic makeup showed clear signs of manipulation. Certain sequences had been enhanced, explaining his extraordinary physical abilities. "What have they done to you, Aurora?" she murmured, watching through her office window as the golden foal curled up next to his mother for the night. The test results in her hands felt heavy with implications, leaving her uncertain whether this discovery would help or harm their special new arrival. The morning sun cast long shadows as Olivia pulled into the police station parking lot. Her hands clutched the folder containing Aurora's genetic test results. Inside, Officer Matthews greeted her with a grim expression. "We've been digging into Victor King's background," he said, leading her to a small conference room. "Found some troubling connections." Spread across the table were documents and photographs linking Victor to a facility called Gentech Labs. Officer Matthews pointed to a grainy surveillance photo showing Victor entering a nondescript building. "This lab's been on our radar for years. They claim to do standard animal genetics research, but there are rumors of illegal experiments." Olivia's stomach tightened as she shared Aurora's test results. The officer's eyes widened as he reviewed the data. "This matches patterns we've seen in other Gentech cases," he said quietly, "but nothing this advanced." Back at the ranch, Olivia watched Aurora trot alongside Starfire in the paddock. The foal's movements were impossibly smooth, each step perfectly placed. When she called his name, he responded immediately, trotting over with purpose. "Good boy," she said, offering him an apple slice. Aurora took it carefully, then nudged her pocket where she kept more treats. His intelligence was uncanny. Mr. Callahan approached, his weathered face creased with worry. "Word's getting around about our golden miracle," he said. "Had 3 calls today from horse magazines wanting interviews." They watched as Aurora figured out the paddock's gate latch with his nose, something that had taken other horses months to learn. Mr. Callahan shook his head in amazement and concern. "We need to keep him safe," he said. "There's no telling who might try to claim him once they learn what he can do." As darkness fell, Olivia finished her evening rounds. The crunch of gravel caught her attention. Through the stable windows, she spotted an unfamiliar car idling near the entrance, its headlights dim. Mr. Callahan emerged from his office, shotgun in hand. "Third car today," he muttered. "They're getting bolder." Olivia hurried to Aurora's stall. The foal watched her with those striking blue eyes as she double-checked the locks. Starfire shifted nervously beside him. "No one's taking you away," Olivia whispered, her hand resting on the stall door. At the police station, Victor King sat rigidly in the interrogation room. His usual confidence wavered as Officer Matthews laid out the evidence. Aurora's genetic test results, the tracking chip's data, and documentation from Gentech Labs. "Care to explain this, Mr. King?" Officer Matthews pushed the papers across the table. Victor's shoulders slumped. After a long pause, he spoke. "Fine. Yes, I implanted the tracking chip in Starfire. It was designed to monitor the genetic modifications I made to ensure the foal developed as planned." Olivia, who had been watching through the two-way mirror, burst into the room. Her face was flushed with anger. "You could have killed them both. Do you have any idea what Starfire went through?" "You don't understand," Victor said, straightening his tie. "These experiments are crucial for advancing equine genetics. The chip allowed us to track the development of enhanced traits. Strength, intelligence, agility. Aurora is living proof that it worked." "Worked?" Olivia's voice shook. "You used Starfire like a lab rat without her owner's consent. You endangered her life and Aurora's." Victor waved his hand dismissively. "Necessary risks for progress. Every scientific breakthrough requires sacrifice. Aurora is worth millions. He's the future of horse breeding." "He's not a product," Olivia snapped. "He's a living creature who deserves to be protected, not exploited." Back at the ranch, Olivia found Mr. Callahan in his office. News of Victor's confession had already hit the local media. Through the window, they could see reporters gathering at the front gate. "They're calling Aurora a miracle horse," Mr. Callahan said, tossing aside a newspaper. "Everyone wants to know about Victor's experiments." Olivia watched as a news van pulled up, its satellite dish gleaming in the afternoon sun. "We won't let them turn Aurora and Starfire into a circus show," she declared. "No matter what happens, we won't let them become experiments again." Mr. Callahan nodded grimly as another news van appeared on the horizon. The morning sun had barely risen when the first camera flashes lit up the ranch gates. A sea of reporters pressed against the fence, their microphones thrust forward like eager fingers. Olivia watched from the barn doorway, her heart heavy with concern. "Mr. Callahan, can you tell us about the genetically modified foal?" one reporter shouted. "Is it true the foal has supernatural abilities?" called another. Mr. Callahan stood at the gate, his weathered face calm but determined. "Folks, I understand your curiosity, but Aurora is a newborn foal who needs peace and quiet. We won't be giving interviews or allowing photographs at this time." Olivia stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. "The best thing for Aurora and Starfire is privacy," she added firmly. "Any stress could affect their health." Later that afternoon, the town hall buzzed with tension as local authorities addressed the gathered crowd. Sheriff Cooper stood at the podium, his voice steady. "Victor King has been arrested on multiple charges of illegal animal experimentation and fraud." Olivia took the stage next, her hands trembling slightly as she held up the genetic test results. These tests confirm that Aurora's DNA was artificially modified without the owner's knowledge or consent. The tracking device removed during surgery proves Mr. King's deliberate deception. The crowd murmured as she shared photos of the metallic device. "This isn't about scientific progress," she continued. "This is about protecting innocent animals from dangerous and unethical experiments." As evening settled over the ranch, Mr. Callahan gathered his staff near the main barn. The setting sun painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, casting long shadows across their faces. "I want to thank each of you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "These past weeks haven't been easy, but you've shown incredible dedication. Aurora and Starfire aren't just valuable horses. They're family, and this ranch protects its family. The staff nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the unity that had grown stronger through the crisis. From her spot by the paddock fence, Olivia watched Aurora dance across the grass, his golden coat gleaming in the fading light. The foal pranced around his mother, who watched with gentle attentiveness. Despite his genetic enhancements, he was just a playful baby horse, innocent and pure. Olivia gripped the fence tighter, silently renewing her promise to protect him from anyone who might try to exploit his unique nature. The morning mail arrived with yet another stack of offers and inquiries about Aurora. Mr. Callahan sat at his desk, sorting through the envelopes with a weary expression. One particular letter caught his attention, an offer from a prominent international investor. $5 million, he read aloud, shaking his head as Olivia entered his office. They think everything has a price tag. Olivia picked up the letter, her eyes widening at the amount. The investor had outlined plans to showcase Aurora at exclusive events worldwide. Aurora is family, not a commodity, Mr. Callahan said firmly, taking the letter back and dropping it into his wastebasket. His voice carried the same warmth it had the day Aurora was born. In her own office, Olivia's inbox overflowed with emails from prestigious research institutions. Each message highlighted the groundbreaking potential of studying Aurora's genetic modifications. One renowned scientist wrote about possible advances in treating equine diseases. Another mentioned breakthrough possibilities in genetic research. Olivia stared at her computer screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The scientific part of her mind understood the value of such research. But when she thought of Aurora, his playful spirit, his gentle interactions with the staff, the way he nestled against Starfire, her heart ached at the thought of turning him into a research subject. "He's not a lab specimen," she whispered to herself. "He's a living, breathing creature who deserves to just be a horse." Later that afternoon, Olivia and Mr. Callahan sat in his office, discussing the mounting pressure from various organizations. "These scientists make compelling arguments," Olivia admitted, though her voice carried doubt. "But studying him would mean constant tests, disrupting his life with Starfire." Mr. Callahan nodded slowly. "We have a responsibility here, Olivia, not just to science, but to Aurora himself." Their discussion grew heated as they weighed the potential benefits against Aurora's well-being. Finally, Mr. Callahan stood up, his decision clear in his eyes. "We're keeping his genetic information private," he declared. "That's final." The next morning, Olivia stood before a group of reporters at the ranch gates. Camera flashes punctuated her words as she delivered their decision. "Aurora's well-being comes first," she stated firmly. "He's not an experiment. He's part of our family." She paused, looking back at the peaceful ranch behind her. "Moving forward, the Callahan Ranch will serve as a sanctuary for ethical animal care. We hope our stand today helps set a precedent for protecting all animals from exploitation." The letters arrived in elegant envelopes bearing prestigious letterheads from some of the country's top veterinary institutions. Olivia spread them across her desk, each one offering opportunities she'd once only dreamed about. The University of California wanted her to lead their equine genetics program. Cornell offered a research position with state-of-the-art facilities. Dr. Parker leaned against her office doorframe, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "These are incredible opportunities, Olivia. You could shape the future of veterinary medicine." She traced her fingers over the embossed letters, feeling the weight of possibility in each offer. Through her window, she could see Aurora prancing in the paddock, his golden coat gleaming in the morning sun. "I know," she replied softly. "It's just—" "Just what?" Dr. Parker asked. though his knowing smile suggested he already understood. Olivia spent her afternoon in the paddock with Aurora, watching him demonstrate his extraordinary abilities. The young foal easily cleared obstacles meant for mature horses, his movements fluid and graceful. When he finished showing off, he trotted over to nuzzle her shoulder, his blue eyes sparkling with intelligence. Clara joined her at the fence, clipboard in hand. "He's something special, isn't he?" "They all are," Olivia replied, watching as Aurora returned to Starfire's side. "Every day here brings something new, something meaningful." Clara nodded, setting down her clipboard. "You know, I've worked at other ranches before, but nothing compares to this place. You've made a real difference here, Olivia." She paused, smiling warmly. "Maybe this is where you're meant to be." As evening approached, Mr. Callahan found Olivia in the stable, checking on Starfire's recovery progress. The mare's coat gleamed with health, a testament to Olivia's dedicated care. "I saw the offers on your desk," he said quietly. "Impressive opportunities." Olivia straightened up, meeting his concerned gaze. Mr. Callahan's weathered face held an expression of fatherly worry she'd grown familiar with over the months. "You're the heart of this ranch now, Olivia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't do this without you." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes as she looked around the stable. Each stall held an animal she knew intimately, their personalities, their quirks, their needs. Aurora poked his head over his stall door, nickering softly at her. In that moment, the decision crystallized in her heart. The prestigious offers might advance her career, but here at Callahan Ranch she was making a real difference. Here, she had found not just a job, but a purpose. Standing at the paddock fence as the sun set, Olivia felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. The ranch stretched out before her, bathed in golden light, and she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ranch as the staff gathered for their daily meeting. The atmosphere had changed dramatically from the tense days following Aurora's birth. Where there had once been whispered arguments and suspicious glances, there was now easy laughter and shared purpose. "Remember when we couldn't agree on anything?" Clara asked, helping Tom, one of the stable hands, carry fresh hay. "Now look at us." Tom nodded, a smile crossing his weathered face. "Nothing like a special horse to bring folks together." The staff worked in seamless coordination, their movements choreographed by months of shared responsibility. Even the newest ranch hands had found their place in this tight-knit community, all united by their dedication to Aurora and Starfire's well-being. In the main office, Olivia stood before a whiteboard covered in detailed protocols. She had gathered the staff for their weekly education session, something she'd implemented after Aurora's case. "Understanding genetics helps us be better caretakers," she explained, drawing simple diagrams. "We need to protect the natural balance while providing the best care possible." The staff listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. Mr. Callahan watched from the doorway, pride evident in his expression. Under Olivia's guidance, the ranch had become more than just a workplace. It was a center for ethical animal care. "Each animal deserves respect and understanding," Olivia continued. "Aurora's case taught us that." Later that afternoon, the ranch buzzed with excitement as everyone prepared for Aurora's 6-month celebration. Colorful ribbons decorated the fence posts, and several staff members had brought their families to join the festivities. Aurora pranced around the main paddock, his golden coat gleaming. At 6 months old, he had grown into his long legs, moving with extraordinary grace. Starfire watched from nearby, her recovery complete, her proud bearing restored. "Look how far they've come," Clara remarked, standing beside Olivia. Olivia nodded, watching Aurora demonstrate his remarkable abilities for the gathered crowd. He cleared a small jump with ease, then trotted over to where she stood. With gentle playfulness, he nipped at her sleeve, drawing laughter from the onlookers. Mr. Callahan raised a glass of lemonade. "To Aurora and to the family we've become," he announced, his voice carrying across the yard. The staff cheered, their faces bright with genuine joy. Olivia felt her heart swell as she looked around at these people who had become more than colleagues. Aurora nudged her again, demanding attention, and she laughed, scratching behind his ears. The morning air held a crisp bite as Olivia, Clara, and Mr. Callahan stood at the fence line, watching Aurora with bated breath. The young foal had positioned himself at the edge of the open field, his muscles taut with anticipation. His golden coat caught the early sunlight, making him appear almost ethereal against the backdrop of green pasture. "He's never had this much space before," Clara whispered, gripping the fence rail. Mr. Callahan nodded, his weathered face creased with a mixture of concern and excitement. Let him choose his moment. Aurora's ears flicked forward, his bright blue eyes scanning the expanse before him. Starfire watched from nearby, unusually calm as her extraordinary son tested his boundaries. Suddenly, Aurora burst into motion. His powerful legs propelled him forward with explosive energy, and gasps of amazement escaped from the gathered onlookers. His stride was unlike anything they had ever seen, part wild horse, part living art. His golden coat rippled like liquid sunlight as he accelerated across the field. Ranch hands stopped their morning tasks, drawn to the magnificent display. They cheered and whistled as Aurora demonstrated his incredible speed and agility. He moved with impossible grace, each stride perfectly measured, each turn executed with precision that seemed almost supernatural. Olivia felt tears welling in her eyes as pride swelled in her chest. All those nights of worry, all the careful monitoring and protection had led to this moment. Aurora wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. "Would you look at that?" Mr. Callahan breathed, shaking his head in wonder. "I've never seen anything like it in all my years." As Aurora completed his run, he gradually slowed and trotted back to where Starfire stood. His chest heaved slightly, but his eyes sparkled with joy. Olivia approached him slowly, placing a gentle hand on his strong neck. "You're extraordinary, Aurora," she whispered. The young horse turned his head and nuzzled her hand affectionately, their bond as strong as ever. The seasons changed, painting the ranch in new colors as Aurora grew from a remarkable foal into an even more extraordinary young horse. His golden coat deepened to a rich amber, and his blue eyes retained their striking intensity. Every day brought new surprises as he demonstrated abilities far beyond those of normal horses. Olivia spent countless hours working with Aurora in the training ring. She marveled at how quickly he picked up new commands, often understanding what she wanted before she fully expressed it. He learned to respond to subtle hand signals, voice commands, and even seemed to read the emotions of those around him. "That's incredible," Clara often remarked, watching Aurora master in minutes what took other horses weeks to learn. "It's like he knows exactly what you're thinking." The ranch hands took to calling him the Professor because of his thoughtful demeanor and keen intelligence. He would often pause to observe their work, his head tilted in curiosity, before finding creative ways to help, like carrying tools in his mouth or standing perfectly still to provide shade while they fixed fences. One peaceful afternoon, Olivia sat on a bench near Aurora's paddock, watching him graze alongside Starfire. Her mind wandered back to that chaotic night of his birth, the fear and uncertainty that had filled the stable. She remembered the metallic device they'd found, Victor's confession, and all the drama that followed. Now, looking at Aurora's serene presence, those troubled times felt distant. He had taught her so much about patience, trust, and the profound depth of animal consciousness. Through him, she had learned that the bond between humans and animals went far deeper than she'd ever imagined. "You've changed everything," she murmured, smiling as Aurora's ears perked up at her voice. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the ranch, Olivia made her way to the paddock fence for her evening ritual of watching the sunset. Aurora lifted his head from grazing and walked over to join her, his movements fluid and graceful. He positioned himself beside her at the fence, gently resting his head on her shoulder, a gesture that had become their special tradition. Together, they watched the sky transform into brilliant shades of orange and pink. Aurora's warmth against her shoulder provided comfort, and Olivia reached up to stroke his neck. The trust between them felt absolute, unshakable. The setting sun painted them in golden light, their silhouettes merging as they stood in peaceful companionship. In that moment, all the scientific mysteries and genetic enhancements that had brought Aurora into being seemed less important than the simple truth of their connection. The Callahan Ranch had transformed into a beacon of ethical animal care, drawing visitors from across the country. The once troubled atmosphere had given way to a harmonious environment where both animals and humans thrived. Olivia's innovative care protocols had set new standards, while the staff worked together like a well-oiled machine. Starfire spent her days contentedly grazing in the lush pastures, her previous ordeal nothing but a distant memory. She would often pause to watch Aurora's activities with maternal pride, her eyes following his graceful movements across the fields. The bond between mother and son remained unshakable, a testament to their shared resilience. Aurora had become the ranch's crowning jewel. His presence brought wonder to everyone who visited, from wide-eyed children to seasoned horse trainers. His intelligence and gentle nature made him approachable despite his extraordinary abilities, and he seemed to understand exactly how to interact with each visitor. On a bright Saturday afternoon, the ranch grounds filled with families from the surrounding community. Mr. Callahan had organized a special celebration to thank everyone who had supported them through the challenging times. Picnic blankets dotted the grass, and the air buzzed with excited chatter. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Callahan announced from the center of the gathering, "thank you all for being here today. What we've achieved wouldn't have been possible without this community support." As if on cue, Aurora galloped across the field, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. Children gasped in delight as he demonstrated his remarkable agility, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. He leapt over obstacles with ease, his movements precise and powerful. Olivia watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride. Tears welled in her eyes as she observed the crowd's reaction, their faces filled with awe and joy. Parents lifted their children for better views, and phones captured videos of Aurora's display. The atmosphere was electric, with wonder and appreciation. Community members approached Olivia throughout the afternoon, sharing stories of how Aurora's journey had inspired them. Some spoke of how the ranch's ethical stance had changed their perspective on animal care. Others simply wanted to express their gratitude for preserving something truly special. As the sun began its descent and families started gathering their belongings, Olivia found herself standing beside Mr. Callahan near the main paddock. They watched Aurora playfully nudging Starfire, both horses relaxed and content in their home. "We've come so far," Olivia said softly, feeling the weight of their journey in those words. Mr. Callahan nodded, his eyes twinkling with pride and affection. "And it's just the beginning," he replied. In that moment, Aurora reared up against the backdrop of the setting sun, his silhouette powerful and majestic. His golden coat caught the last rays of daylight, creating an almost ethereal glow that perfectly embodied what he had come to represent: resilience, hope, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. If you enjoyed the story of Olivia and Starfire, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.